Hello and welcome to Amsterdam to Kickstart 2023. I'm Jean-Marc and joining me now is Martijn Blanken, CEO of EXA Infrastructure. And Martijn, it's been a long time that I've been wanting to speak to you. First of all, how are you? And I hope you're doing well and enjoying the conference.
I'm doing very well. It's always good to be back in my home country. Haven't lived here for almost 20 years, but it's always a pleasure to visit Amsterdam.
Because you're based in London, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. Let's talk about digital infrastructure expansion. There's you operate a massive portfolio across 34 countries, mostly in Europe and then also in the US. I'm sure you come across a lot of judicial barriers and all this, and we'll go into the EXA story in a second, but speaking industry-wise, what are the main challenges with digital infrastructure deployment, especially within the fiber segment of the market?
Well, there are a few. Firstly, the fiber infrastructure and the data center infrastructure go hand in hand, because fiber goes where workloads go.
One without the other,
and or the other way around. And we all are very much aware about all the energy and regulatory sub-challenges that face the data center industry, and to some extent it reflects on the fiber industry as well. The GODP and data sovereignty plays an important role as to where providers of services, content, application and service providers put their workloads, and that will determine where our networks are going. When it comes down to specific network investments, you have to deal with both regulatory of national, regional and municipal sort of authorities. And
that's within the country. We're not even talking about international.
That's within the country, and then internationally, it can become quite challenging.
Yeah. What is the most challenging country in Europe? I've got a few names in mind.
Well, I think it's fair to say the further you move east, the more challenging.
I was thinking Southern Europe east as well. So.
Yeah, look. So one thing is obviously getting the permits to build out the infrastructure, or to pull the fibers. The second thing is to what extent are able to police it, not just terrestrially but also submarine. We've seen it recently with the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. More and more articles emerge in the media about the vulnerability of subsea infrastructure, for example, and to what extent you can police that. And I'm not even thinking about terrorism right now, but simple things like bottom trawling or fishing and anchorage causes a lot of damage to the submarine industry. Some countries police their territorial waters better than others, let me put it like that.
It's very interesting because there was actually a big topic at PTC this year in Hawaii around the actual physical security of these assets and the fact that this industry might have to start working a little bit more with the military alliances to really protect this infrastructure. And I mean, we mentioned fishing and all those sort of things, but also on the more armed side of things, it's a change that's coming.
Yeah, well, look, the military support or any governmental support, right? So the thing is, in many countries there are laws in place that tell you where you can and cannot go if you operate a vessel, for example. But there's a different thing to police it. So you can have the laws and the rules, but if you don't have anyone to oversee it and make sure that people adhere to it, then it's still not much use, is it?
Okay. And then you're in a lot of countries. You've got 34 countries in your footprint, as we said at the beginning as well. But Southern Europe and Eastern Europe seem to be hugely important to what you're doing, at least for your recent expansions and capital investments that you've been doing on the markets. Give us a description of what's happening in Southern Europe and Eastern Europe. Why are you going there so heavily? And you continue to expand. I mean, we've just seen the recent announcement into Portugal, for instance, and more towards the eastern side of Europe as well. Just give us a spiel of why in South Europe and Eastern Europe now.
There's often multiple reasons for it. The first one is that many of the providers of cloud content and technology services are going south and east. They're doing that because they want to provide a better user experience, and lower latency helps to provide a better user experience. They're also doing it to adhere to local data sovereignty rules and other regulations. Sometimes it's stipulated that you have to maintain certain content within a particular country, but also the availability of land and green energy plays an important role. And in Southern Europe, solar energy is obviously quite abundantly available. In the Nordics, we're talking about hydro, and that is an important driver for data center operators to go into those regions. Another one is the landing of submarine cables. You mentioned Portugal. Well, the area around Lisbon and Sines land a lot of cables coming from Western Africa and South America. Obviously, the cables and the traffic coming from Asia towards Europe currently all travels over via Egypt, and we're looking for alternative routes, land-based routes across the Arabian Peninsula, but also across Turkey or even the Caucasus, and that means that those traffics land in Greece and Turkey and Bulgaria, and they need to have a traffic to ultimately transport it back to Western Europe.
That's quite fascinating. And what about the other side of the Atlantic? Because you've also got a footprint in the US.
Correct.
It's mostly on the east coast of the US, but it goes all the way up to the Great Lakes in Chicago.
Yeah.
What's the plan for US? Are you going to really become this massive national player in the US as well, or it's more complementary than anything else?
It's more complementary, and in the US we're a transmission provider, so we don't operate ducts, and we're not in the infrastructure market where we sell dark fibers. That we do also exclusively do in Europe. But we have many American customers who have transatlantic needs. The financial services industry is an important example of it. You've got the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange. So therefore the trading houses within the financial services buy a lot of services transatlantic, and that's an example of a customer segment that we're serving. And we will continue to expand our network there, but following the needs from the customers that we serve.
Okay. And then in this industry, a synonym words to expansion is acquisition. You've been quite active with that. You acquired assets for Interaction, Iberia, you got KPN in 2019, you got Vitesse in 2014. Surely there's another acquisition coming up. So talk us through your Capex and M&A strategy.
Look, this is a capital-intensive industry, and as a consequence, scale matters a lot. And you can organically expand your network footprint, or you can do it inorganically. It's a buy versus build. And sometimes it makes more sense to deploy the capital organically, and sometimes it makes sense to buy an existing company or asset base. The examples that you just mentioned were, is basically all led up to what currently is EXA Infrastructure. It is not completely theoretical that we will further expand our network footprint through acquisitions, but I've done a lot of M&A work in my career, and I know that for every deal that sort of sees the light of day, there are 10 deals that never happen. So there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes, and it may or may not happen. We'll see.
Well, we'll be here to watch it. But you're probably more focused on green deployments now, greenfield.
Well, the good thing, if you deploy capital organically, you're in full control. And you're not dependent on anyone else. So if we decide to expand our network footprint into Bulgaria, or add routes in Bulgaria or Greece or Italy for that matter, as long as we can get our hands on duct and fiber and land for ILA stations or cable landing stations, we're good, right? We're not that dependent on external processes.
Maybe a little bit of a naive question, but if you want to buy something in, say, Bulgaria and around that side of Europe, are there players to buy, or is it just to build it?
Yeah. So the answer is always yes. There's always assets to buy. Sometimes it's whole companies. Sometimes it's just a subset of assets of a particular company. So you got the equity deals and the asset deals. But mainly in every country there are things for sale. But as with anything, for sale it sometimes means that the seller and the prospective buyer have very different understanding of what the actual value of the asset is. So we'll see if that happens.
Okay. And a quick question on talent, because you've been announcing a lot of new executives coming into the business. I'm sure with executives there's also more junior staff that comes into it. How do you find how are you navigating the hardship of finding new talent in this space? Because this seems to be the top two priority in this industry today.
It's not easy, right? So certainly when you look at more senior executives, you often end up recruiting from the industry. And some of us have got a bit of pedigree in the industry, so you build a network and you tap into your network. Yeah. Occasionally you are being helped by an executive search firm who you can engage to help you find talent. We're trying to build a healthy mix between industry executives and people who have an experience outside of the industry. So we hire people from the pharma industry or from General Electric, for example, just to add more diversity to it, because diversity is a big theme, but diversity is much more than just gender diversity. It's obviously
diversity of thought and skills.
It's diversity of thought that ultimately counts. I'm particularly passionate about the working at the graduate level or at the early stage career level. And that is something that we have to do as an industry. The better we can collaborate to attract young people to move into this industry, the more important it is. That is not something one individual company can solve by itself.
Everyone together.
It's everyone together, because the industry is facing a retirement cliff. If you look at almost every player, they will tell you that in the next 10 years, a big portion of their employee base will go into retirement. And currently we're not quite sure how we're going to backfill that hole that will exist in a few years' time.
Yeah. Which the Uptime Institute is always pushing forward the numbers of how much people we need, 200,000 or something like that, which is enormous.
When you
There'll be a lot more.
A lot of people. And look, we're a wonderful industry. And especially when you are smaller, dedicated players, such as EXA Infrastructure, you actually can make a difference. I spent quite a bit of my career working for very large, tens of thousands of people organizations. It's good fun, that has lots of benefits. But in a small organization, you really make a difference. And there are many smaller players who can offer wonderful careers to talented people.
And especially young people, I think giving ownership to them of something is much more valuable than sometimes money. It's about being appreciated and actually evolving and developing skills. And I mean, we were saying as well before we even got on camera, that this is quite a healthy and positive industry to be in, because whilst the world is dealing with so much negativity around economic recessions and slowdowns, this is still an industry where the top two priorities really are sustainability and talent, because cash isn't really the biggest problem. It's changing.
But more importantly, the demand is not really a problem. And name me one industry that has the almost certainty that for the next 5 to 10 years, the annual growth rate of the traffic volumes is north of 30%.
There's no one.
Okay, the value is a bit less than that, but there's no discussion whether the services that we provide are needed in terms of numbers of terabits that need to be transported from A to B, or the number of megawatts for IT loads that need to be provided. There's only one way is up. So that's
the only way is up. I hope we don't have copyright issues with that one.
But that's a good base to start from, isn't it? So as you say, sustainability and talent is in comparison to some other industries have to worry about their existence. Will they be there 5 years from now? We don't have to worry about that one. Those existential questions are not here.
Knock on wood. The last question that I'd like to ask everyone when we are at the conference is, this is 2023's edition. A lot has happened. I always ask this, even last year I was asking, of course the world changed dramatically since the last edition, but what do you expect the main topic to be going into Kickstart 2024, February 2024?
I think that two things. The collaboration across the industry to influence regulators, and not just within one country but across country, that the regulatory regimes need to be better aligned and need to be skewed a little bit more towards protecting the interest of investors, because that's not always done very smartly. And we just talked about the talent theme. That will continue to be a theme, and it only will become more urgent because of the retirement cliff I spoke about earlier.
Okay. Martijn Blanken, CEO of EXA Infrastructure, thanks so much for talking to me.
Thank you, John.
As for your home, thank you for watching, and do check the Tech Capital and its social networks for the latest news and views from the digital infrastructure sector worldwide. At the Tech Capital, you lead, we report. Bye for now.